ya la la la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya 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 la 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 la, la 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 la, la la la. Ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya 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 la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 beginning ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya 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 la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la la.
Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Shalom.
Baruchim Habayim. Delighted to welcome you to this sacred space. Those of you here in person and those of you who are joining us on our various platforms to this sacred time as together we welcome Shabbat. For those of you who are on the various platforms and you want to download the service bulletin, or even more so, download the various texts we will be looking tonight with our scholar in residence, you'll be able to do so from our website. You'll see the place right when you go to the website. As we begin our service with the singing of Yedid Nefesh, you'll find it on page 736 or before you on the screens.
636.
636.
Yedi nefesh avarachaman, Yedi nefesh avarachaman, Beshochanecha, Eretzonecha, Beshochanecha, Ya la 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 la, Eretzonecha. Yarutz Abdecha Kemoaya Ishtachaveh Elai La 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 El Mul Hadarecha Yerav Lo Yedidutecha Inofetzu Ya la 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 Bechol ta'am.
As we continue welcoming Shabbat with Benchlicht and Kiddush, we call upon Jean and Lois to lead us. You'll find it from pages 120 through 123.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. The heaven and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
As we continue welcoming Shabbat, Lecha Dodi 138 are before you on the screens.
Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה פני שבת לקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת לקבלה שהמור וזכור ותמור לך תשמי אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשם ולתפארת מליתי לה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונכה כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נפשוחה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה התעוררי התעוררי כי באור קומי אורי 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 שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת לקבלה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמונה עם סגולה אוי חלה אוי חלה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לגרח קלה בני שבת נקבלה.
On pages 145 and 4, entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. There is no place on earth without the presence.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה בימד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיידךו בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם לעולם היה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לילה מן כה ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירם בימה ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
As we continue together, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sh'arim, ובתבונה משנה עיתים ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה גולל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Ya bye 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 ya bye 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 bimba ya bye 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 ya bye 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 bimba ya bye 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 ya bye 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 bimba ya bye 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 ya bye 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 bimba mi khamocha ba elim madonna mi khamocha nedar bakodesh lo ratehilo o sefel Ratilo, יוסף אלה בלכודך ובניך בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים זה אליהו ויאמרו אדוני אם לא לעולם ועד יא ביי 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 יא ביי ביי בים יא ביי 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 יא ביי ביי בים יא ביי 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 יא ביי ביי בים יא ביי 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 יא ביי ביי בים ונאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים ושמו צאתנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים העמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש שבת וינפש שבת, וינפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Na 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 Adonai, na 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 Svatai tiftach, na 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 ufi yagir tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai, na 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 Svatai tiftach, na 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 ufi yagir tehilatecha. Na 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 Svatai tiftach, ufi yagir tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Koneh Hakol, ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו ביחווה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה לחיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים, אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated as I continue on page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lahodot.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim le'olam. אתה הוא מלך אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל. בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך, תשים לעולם. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל
In the week to come, among the couples who will be observing their wedding anniversaries are Jason and Sarah Cherney celebrating their 35th, and Chuck and Donna Luber celebrating their 70th. Our God and God of the generations before us, we thank you for our sacred heritage of marriage and family life. Throughout history, marriage has been the firm foundation to our people when we were driven from place to place and when we were at rest and settled. We praise you, Eternal One, for sanctifying your people Israel by the covenant of marriage. We thank you for the fullness of joy of those who are celebrating the anniversary of their wedding in this season. Their lives are blessed with the gift of loving comradeship and of devotion to each other. Their joys are heightened, their difficulties lightened as they face life together. May their companionship continue to bring them strength. May their home be hallowed by your divine guidance. May they be blessed with peace and health and contentment, as together we all say, Amen. So I continue on page 371, and those of you on the other platforms will eventually find some of the words before you on the screen. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu Avram, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, v'Yavarech et Cholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those of our friends who are ill. Debbie Alpert, Craig Ann Sear, James Ansfield, Allison Appel, Jason Arnold, Yaakov David, Ben Fredelesu, Vinyamin, Judy Bednar, Fern Bentkover, Naomi Tamar, Bat Masha Shimon, Richard Block, Blake Bold, Vivian Borkin, Mordechai Ben Manya Venachman, Dennis Burke, Mike DeWald, Cecilia Diggins, Michelle Ike, Riva Falk, Michael Favreau, Caitlin Saucier Feltner, Barry Foreman, Rabbi Lester Frazen, Helene Freed, Amy Ginsberg, Sam Hanna, Beth Gobich Harris, Ellen Hilgendorf, Ilana Himmelfarb, Tzippi Bat Kalman, Louise Sandler Kaufman, Evelyn Lager, Philip Landwer, Barbara Lauterbach, Jat Lebrecht, Bruce Lefko, Steve Leon, Lloyd Levine, Ellen Levin, Ron Levin, David Levy, Kathy Liddell, Richard Linky, Bill Lisenring, Zavi Ram, Robert Gold Kravitz, Artie Majeski, Beatrice McClure, Richard Moskowitz, Jeff Peck, Gail Sassner Peterson, Kathy Polzian, Lipman Pincus, Ben Lebu Mendel, Batja Bat Lebu Moshe, Shirley Silverman, Arnold Steiderman, Marty Stein, Earl Strait, Chase Strick, Laura Sussman, Freda Bat Golda, Kenneth Waltz, Rachel Reina Bat Pesa Malka, Jim Wilkinson, Wendy Yanow, Kelly Zastro, Rebecca Zuckerman, Chaim Moshe Alevi Ben Leah, Avram Yosef Ben Rachel Menachem, Leah Bat Chaiki Mordechai, Leah Bat Beruri Ufinchas, Yael Bat Yudit, Shoshana Miriam Bat Sarah Avraham, Miriam Bat Dorit, Pesach Ben Pesha, Batya Bat Miriam Yosef, Dov Yitzchak Ben Chaya, Chazan Dov Yitzchak Ben Chaya, Hara Feivel Ben Sarah Abba, and to those names we add Jeannie Vergettis and Stephen Palmer. Jody. Wendy Cohn. Carol. Nancy Bodner. Nancy Potter. Barb. Lydia Wegman and Della Singer. Della Ginger. I'll get this yet. Barbara's my cousin. I should be. Oh, Stella. Stella Skidder. I'm embarrassed. Okay, I apologize. Margot. Hang on, Gloria. Andrea Rosenthal. Vladimir Krishnyov. And those of you on Zoom, if you'll raise your hands virtually or visually. Oh, Leah. Leah, you won't hear me from there. I'm sorry. Leah, if you'll unmute and share the name.
Marilyn Landers and Neil Schnall.
Neil Storl, Marilyn Landers.
Neil Schnall.
Neil Stahl.
Schnall. That's okay.
Charlene.
My mother, Hui Yao.
All right, Wendy Yao. And
What happened here? Camera.
if you'll mute again, and Jim, if you'll unmute.
Jim Ralston, Cheryl Mays, and Ruben Siegert.
Jim Ralston, Cheryl Mays, and Ruben Singert, because we are praying on their behalf. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored, their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of spirit and of body. May God grant wisdom and insight to those who bring healing. And may God grant courage and comfort to those whose struggles continue. As together we all say,
Amen. Mi sheberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of spirit, the renewal of body, and let us say Amen.
this Shabbat we begin the third book of Torah, in Hebrew Vayikra, in English, of course, Leviticus. Deals with directions and rituals for sacrifices, korbanot. Here, of course, in a sense, at the tent of meeting, eventually at the temple in Jerusalem. Sacrifice, korban, both the English and the Hebrew perhaps could help us understand this practice, which seems perhaps a bit distant to us today. Take the Hebrew korban, which has to do with drawing near with an offering, of overcoming the distance between us and God, or perhaps the distance between us and other people when we sin, when we do something wrong. And sacrifice, perhaps the best way to understand this, as I have offered in the past, is that most American games, of course, of baseball, as the season opener nears. A sacrifice hit or a bunt, and maybe this year we'll see more of these because of some of the crazy rules changes, some of which I think are really crazy, others which will encourage things like this, where you see beyond yourself for the good of the team, or obviously for the good of the community. I want to look at the 5th chapter of the book, verses 1 to maybe 13. If you want to follow along in the Chumashim, which you'll find seated throughout the sanctuary in the pockets of some of theirs in front of you, and if you're in the front row, perhaps in the pocket right below you. Again, pages 670 to 671. Clearly, the emphasis in the text is on what a person must do to make expiation for his sin and thereby come closer to God. But I would suggest to you that there's another profound message in the text, one you should hear as I read these verses. If a person incurs guilt, when one is sort of public imprecation, but although able to testify as having either seen or learned of the matter, has not given information and thus is subject to punishment. Or when a person touches any impure thing, be it the carcass of an impure beast, or the carcass of impure cattle, or the carcass of an impure creeping thing, and the fact has escaped notice, and then being impure, that person realizes guilt. Or when one touches human impurity, any such impurity whereby someone becomes impure, and though having known about it, the fact has escaped notice, but later the person realizes guilt. Or when a person utters an oath to bad or good purpose, whatever a human being may utter in an oath, and though having known about it, the fact has escaped notice, but later the person realizes guilt in any of these matters. Upon realizing guilt in any of these matters, one shall confess having sinned in that way, and one shall bring as a penalty to the eternal for the sin of which one is guilty, a female from the flock, sheep or goat, as a purgation offering. And the priest shall make expiation for the sin on that person's behalf. But if one's means do not suffice for a sheep, that person shall bring to the eternal as the penalty for that of which one is guilty, 2 turtle doves or other for a burnt offering. No, pardon me, 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a purgation offering and the other for a burnt offering. The offerer shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer first the bird for the purgation offering, pinching its head at the nape without severing it. He shall sprinkle some of the blood of the purgation offering on the side of the altar, and what remains of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a purgation offering. And the second bird he shall prepare as a burnt offering according to regulation. For the sin of which one is guilty, the priest shall thus make expiation on behalf of that person, who shall then be forgiven. And if one's means do not suffice for 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, that person shall bring an offering for that of which one is guilty, 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour for a purgation offering. One shall not add oil to it or lay frankincense on it, for it is a purgation offering. The offerer shall bring it to the priest, and the priest shall scoop out of it a handful as a token portion, and turn it into smoke on the altar, with the eternal's offerings by fire. It is a purgation offering. For whatever of these sins one is guilty, the priest shall thus make expiation on behalf of that person, who shall be forgiven. It shall belong to the priest like the meal offering. So skip over the ritual for a moment, and perhaps for some of you the bloody images which might come to mind. What might you think the other profound message here is? Anybody? God will forgive you if you come forward and confess. That's one of them. It's not the one I'm looking for tonight, Sherry, but I'll take it. Okay? Anybody else want to try? Oh, all the way in the back. Yes, Diane. To somehow find forgiveness for yourself, and that's part of it. That's how we also come closer to God. Again, that's good, but not what I'm looking for. Anybody else? Note, if you will, the class distinctions, okay? The rich bring sheep or goats. Those in the middle, maybe the middle class, I don't know, pigeons or doves. And those without means, those who are poor, an offering of flour. Were class distinctions as severe back then as they have become today? Were they, God forbid, are they ingrained in human existence? Are people really different based on class, as one of my colleagues, Michael Gold, once asked? Can that really be the message of these verses? Or might the message be a dramatically different one that no matter how vast the income gap may be, no matter how people may judge others based on class or based on money, we are all children of God, and as children of God, we are all equal, all able to atone, all able to bring offerings and become at one with God. Yeah, the one who has great wealth has the obligation to seek an atonement, to bring an offering with something that is more expensive. But if that person cannot afford an animal of that size and nature, okay, so a bird will do. And if that person cannot afford a bird, a grain offering will do. each and every person can find atonement, that at one-ment with God. It's an ethical statement built into the text and into the temple ritual. May we all draw closer to each other as we draw closer to God. With that, we continue with Aleinu. You'll find it on page 586, as together we rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם בחלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ועושה לארץ, ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו עינות, אמת מלכנו וזולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת יום וחשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
We therefore hope in you, eternal our God. May we soon behold the glory of your might, sweeping away the false gods of the earth, that idolatry be utterly destroyed, perfecting the world under the rule of God, that all humanity invoke your name, turning all the wicked of the earth towards you. Let all who dwell on earth acknowledge that unto you every knee must bend and every tongue swear loyalty. Before you, eternal our God, let them pay homage. Let them give glory to your honored name. Let all accept the yoke of your reign, that you may rule over us soon and forever. For sovereignty is yours, and to all eternity you will reign in glory, as it is written in your Torah. The eternal will reign forever and ever.
ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn now to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. As we take a few moments to meditate on any of the words you can find between pages 592 and 597, or whatever words may be resting on your hearts. As the names of your dear ones are mentioned, we invite you to rise in their loving memory. As we remember the relatives and friends of this congregation who have gone before us into life eternal, we remember tonight the names of Miriam Mimi Habish, Ruth Fromstein, and Christopher John Richardson, who were laid to rest recently. We remember also the names of Louis Abrams, Earl J. Adishek, Lillian Allschwang, Dorothy Berkwich, Louis Berman, Esther Talcott Bishop, Franklin Borzak, Abraham Carlsruhe, Barry Cedarbaum, Libby Chernin, Milton Chernin, Fanny Cohn, Margaret Cohn, Sherry Crone, Jean Margolis Dubin, Rebecca Smith Franklin, Lillian Friedman, Bertha W. Giller, Bertha Glass, Betty Winterglass, Erwin Glick, Harold Goldstein, Dorothy Granoff, Michael Greenfield, Marge Gross, Herbert E. Hartstein, Mayor Heiken, Dolores D. Jacobs, Nathan Jacobs, Gary Brian Kaufman, Louis Kaufman, Peter R. Krug, Bernadine Marsack Lappin, Michael Lever, Florence Louise McCausland, Riken Meisner, Bert J. Meyer, Morris Miller, Rose Lipton-Nager, Joseph Oggins, Reed Jason Pentler, Vic Pinchard, Adeline K. Plouse, Harold A. Primicow, Ellen Bernstein-Recken, Cantor Norman H. Siegel, Nathan Singer, Betty Sinekin, Martha R. Smith, Fred Irving Sonnenfeld, Muriel Jean Stahl, James Stern, Emil Strauss, Pearl Hirschberg Stranad, Barbara A. Bloom Surand, William Bill Tooley's, Molly Trosch, Lenke Wald, Charlotte Weiss, Chuck Willis, Phyllis Schamberg Zion, Joseph Zilber, and Robert David Zucker, whose anniversary of death is remembered tonight. If there are others here in mourning or observing yahrzeit, as my hand comes around, I ask you to rise and mention the name of your dear one. Ken Lauterbach. Martha Cranston. Marcia Cozen. And those of you on Zoom, if you are also remembering a dear one tonight, if you raise your hand virtually or visually. Lee?
Robert Sherman, husband.
Lee, if you go ahead and mention the name now.
No. Robert Sherman.
Can you hear anyone? Name she's mentioning?
I don't know what happened.
Come back. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, maybe my sound, that's okay. I don't know. Maybe my sound is off.
Try to come back, Lee, before we.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't know. Yeah.
We also remember those who perished in the Shoah, whose yahrzeit dates are unknown to us. We pray, may the souls be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May their repose be peace. Zichronam livracha, may their memories forever be a blessing. As we now ask the congregation to join with those who mourn in the words of Kaddish, page 598, or before you on the screens. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shmei rabbah. V'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. B'agalal v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam mul almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit adar v'yit aleh v'yit halal shmedi dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Uyasei shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens above send peace down here to us, to all Israel and to all the world, as together we all say,
Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. This Shabbat, this weekend in memory of one of my predecessors here at Emmanuel B'nai Yeshurun, Rabbi Dudley Weinberg, we honor to have with us Rabbi Dr. Jonathan K. Crane as our scholar in residence. The Dr. Raymond F. Shinazi, Scholar of Bioethics and Jewish Thought at Emory Center for Ethics. Dr. Crane also serves as Professor of Medicine at Emory's Medical School and as a Professor of Religion at Emory's College of Arts and Sciences. But those titles only begin to hint at Rabbi Crane's vast knowledge and expertise in so many areas, from Jewish thought to bioethics, from comparative religions to health and medicine, from food studies to narrative and rhetoric. A product of the Reform movement, you were even president of NIFTY at one time, right? Past president of NIFTY after how many years were you at SWIG of blessed memory? 7 years at Camp SWIG, our equivalent of Oconomowoc out in California, or was our equivalent of Oconomowoc out in California, now Camp Newman at a different place. Jonathan was ordained by the Hebrew Union College about 2 decades ago in New York after graduating from Wheaton College in Massachusetts, with master's degree in peace studies from Notre Dame and in philosophy and Gandhian thought from Gujarat Vidyapith, did I pronounce that correctly, in India? And then a doctorate in modern Jewish thought from the University of Toronto. Rabbi Dr. Crane, Jonathan, has written a number of books, including the Oxford Handbook of Jewish Ethics and Morality with Rabbi Elliot Dorff, who also is from Milwaukee at one time. A former president of the Society of Jewish Ethics and founder and co-editor of the Journal of Jewish Ethics, which he was kind enough to bring a few copies of, which I will leave out over the weekend so you can also peruse it. We could imagine no one better to be our teacher this weekend as we explore Jewish ethics. What a treat for us this Shabbat and this weekend. And so, Jonathan, we thank your wife, Lindy Miller, and your 3 sons, Nadav and Amitai and Rafi, for sharing you with us this weekend, taking you away from them. Rabbi Dr. Jonathan K. Crane, Baruch haba. We're going to set you up with the mic. While we do that, I hope that when you came in, you all got copies of some of the texts that we're going to be exploring. If you didn't, we might have a few copies left to pass out. And those of you online on the various platforms, whether you're streaming on Zoom, on YouTube, or Facebook Live, you can download the texts from the website itself.
Great. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's lovely to be here, and I am really thrilled to be the scholar in residence for Rabbi Weinberg. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking to step into somebody's named scholar in residence gig, because that person must have been so significant to the local community and shaped it in so many different ways. And he served this community for at least 21 years. And he's had an outsized impact on this community. So I'm honored to share some of the things that I have been studying and been curious about in his honor. So tonight I thought we could explore a few of the questions that perhaps have been on your mind of late in the last, say, 5 or 6 years or so, about what is the quality of truth and how much trust can we put into truth, especially when other people are putting forward ideas and concepts and theories, conspiracies that you don't really know if they're actually true. Maybe they're hiding something. Maybe they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes in one way or another. And for me, I've been really curious about the nature of truth and how much trust we can put in truth, as well as its obverse, which is, what is doubt? What is skepticism? What is a lie? What is fraud? And these large philosophical questions have brought me into the field of what I call, or not what I call, but what the scholars call agnotology. Now repeat after me, agnotology. You've never heard this word before, agnotology. Agnotology is the study of ignorance. Now, ignorance is one thing, but the study of ignorance is fascinating. The study of ignorance is how do we manipulate knowledge, or actually unknowledge, in other people to our advantage. How can I keep you guessing as to what I'm about to say? How can I manipulate your ignorance, your unknowledge, in a way that's to my advantage? What kind of entities in society do you think do this all the time? That's not a rhetorical question. I don't want to talk all the time. This is interactive. So what are the institutions or entities out there that you can think of that deploy ignorance to their advantage? Politicians. I've never heard of that. Never would have imagined that politicians have done that. Okay? So politicians, they peddle in ignorance. They also peddle ignorance, but they peddle in ignorance, right? So oftentimes politicians are great actors or agents in trying to keep us ignorant of what they actually are trying to say or do. What else? Or who else? Yes? Lawyers. I can't respond to that, lest I get into trouble. Yes? Salespeople often will tell you the grand things about this object, their widget that they're trying to sell, but they won't tell you all of the maintenance that it requires. Good. What else? What other institutions or people or industries?
News media.
The news media. Interesting. So not all news media are forthcoming about multiple perspectives on whatever subject matter it is that they're investigating through their journalism.
Wealth managers or financial advisors?
Ooh. I don't want to dig too deep into where that came from, but yes. That there could be certain advisors who perhaps disclose certain kind of information or advice that is advantageous perhaps to their bottom line rather than to the client's bottom line. Good. What other institutions or industries or professions might deploy ignorance? Yes?
How about the advertising industry?
Advertising, exactly. They're trying to market and persuade you to buy something that you didn't know that you wanted. Good.
Religion.
What? Religions? How dare you? Really? Religions deploy ignorance? Can you give an example?
Here's a nice neutral one. Saying the Jews were responsible for the plague.
That the Jews were responsible for the plague. Which plague?
206.
So yes, there are conspiracies that are put out there, but those are less about religion per se than about politics and not individuation, but denigration of a certain a perceived threatened population. So that's not religion as such, but it's given religious trappings, if you will. But where in religion, do you think? Or what in religion where ignorance is deployed? To repeat the Kool-Aid, yes. So in certain religious communities, we are taught time and again to receive doctrine. This is what you ought to believe if you are going to be a true member of our community. And we're not going to tell you all of the things that you must believe, but believe the big things and follow through. So religions are also great at deploying ignorance. They tell us many things, but they don't tell us everything. And they keep many of us in the dark about what is actually going on. And I want us to explore some of those things, at least as I have found them in the Judaic textual tradition, where the text, our tradition, actually is is manipulating our unknowledge in curious ways. And I want us to recognize that these strategies, and I'm only going to highlight 3 of them here tonight, that these strategies are common. We do them all the time in our personal lives. There are a couple of other industries before we turn to the text that I wanted to highlight. One is the government writ large, not just politicians, but the government writ large. There are these things called national secrets out there. The military also, they'll tell us that they're moving these chess pieces on the global theater while they're also moving these other chess pieces, but they're not going to disclose that information. Companies, they have patents. And so they will tell you, we make this wonderful widget or this great tasting drink, but we won't tell you everything about it. And so they're deploying ignorance to their advantage. But we do it also in our own private lives. And one of them is perhaps the most common, and it's our first set of texts here. It's called tabooing. What does it mean to taboo something? What does it mean to taboo something? To forbid. Okay? What else might to taboo mean? You use the term all the time, yes? Avoid. To avoid. So it's not necessarily forbid, but it's now refrain from. Interesting. Censorship. So it's a form of censorship. Okay, great. Ironically, it also means to make holy. So when something is holy, it is taboo to treat it like a mundane thing. Those Sifrei Torah in the Ark are holy, and therefore it is taboo for you to do certain things with them that you would otherwise do with just a printed book. And so it's ironic that taboo and holiness are married together. But let's take a look at how the rabbis bring about this idea of tabooing certain things. They want you to be educated Jews. That, trust me, is true. The rabbis, from time immemorial, they want the population of Jews to be educated, but not about everything. So let's take a look at our first text. It comes from the Mishnah, Chagigah. So this is the earliest layer of rabbinic texts, around 200 CE. So I'll read it because you don't have microphones. I'll read it aloud. One is not allowed to expound upon the topic of forbidden sexual relations before 3 or more individuals. Nor may one expound the act of creation and the secrets of the beginning of the world before 2 or more individuals. Nor may one expound by oneself the design of the divine chariot, a mystical teaching with regard to the ways God conducts the world, unless that person is wise and understanding most matters on her own. The Mishnah then continues with the same vein. Whoever looks at 4 matters, it would have been better for that person never to have entered the world. And what are those 4 things? Anyone who reflects upon what is above the firmament and what is below the earth. What was before creation and what will be after the end of the world in 2023. And anyone who has no concern for the honor of your Maker, who inquires into the deals and deals with matters not permitted to that person deserves to have never come into the world. So there you have it. Who would like to translate this into English? So what do you notice? Let's go back and unpack it. What do you notice? What is the first set of things that you are forbidden to study, and study in what kind of contexts and with whom? What are you forbidden to study according to the rabbis? Forbidden sexual relations. What is that?
With animals.
Bestiality. Great. What else? Incest. And say, much of the book of Leviticus, right? There are going to be chapters where you will want to just skip on through because it's talking about sexual impropriety. And you are not allowed to study that according to this Mishnah. Before whom or with whom? 3 or more. Now, let's translate that. What does that mean? Pardon? Good, a group. Now, what does it mean? So let's count. How many people are in this room, this group? 4, exactly. There are 4 people in this classroom. It's you, the teacher, and 3 students. You're not allowed to talk about sexual impropriety in a classroom of 4 people. Why?
Because you're in Florida.
Thankfully, I'm in Wisconsin. Why should you not teach about sexual impropriety in a classroom of 4?
No more than 4?
No, well, 4 or more.
Don't want to give everybody ideas.
Close. It's that when one student asks me, the teacher, a question and I want to respond to her, the other 2 cannot listen and have a conversation by themselves and come to the wrong conclusion. Ooh, that would be dangerous. And that is why it is important for you not to study about sexual impropriety and teach it in a classroom with 3 students.
Why not 2?
Ah, they didn't say that. You can study this if it's a smaller, more intimate session. That's why health classes for my sons is divided up. Girls over here, boys over there, and everybody else who's not, well, you still have to go over here or there. But it's smaller groups. It's to allow for more intimate conversations and less crosstalk and to hopefully prevent wrong conclusions or unhealthy conclusions. So that's on sexual relations. And topic number 2, the act of creation. You're not allowed to study that before 2 students. Again, if you're answering one student, the other one might dream off and not pay attention and come to the wrong theological conclusion, not just the social conclusion, but the wrong theological conclusions. And similarly about the divine chariot. The divine chariot you get to study when you study Ezekiel. And so it is a part of Jewish mysticism. Unless, of course, you are already wise and understanding. If you are especially qualified, then you are allowed to engage in this otherwise taboo subject matter. So what we have here is a rabbinic curriculum. This text from Hagigah is saying, when you run your religious school at CBJ, you can teach on most anything except for these things. And if you're going to teach on these things, you have to construct your classroom in such a manner. And that if you don't construct your classroom in this particular way, these subjects are taboo. You're not allowed to study them. It doesn't mean that these things don't exist. It means that you're not allowed to teach them in those formats. So that's part 1. Part 2 here is whoever looks at 4 issues, it would have been better for that person never to have come into the world. These topics, I can't read my writing. These topics require too much speculation and inquiry and imagination. And they cannot be defined by fiat, by which I mean they can't be defined in a very simple curriculum on a worksheet. You can't just put up the issues about what is before creation and what's after the world, what is above the firmament and what's below the earth. You can't describe those things, at least Judaically speaking, in a very simple manner. It requires using a lot of imagination. And the rabbis at this time period, around 200 CE, they didn't really trust human imagination very well. And so they were worried about it. So they tabooed these subjects. So my question for you is, now that you see that the rabbis are creating a curriculum or the boundaries of proper curriculum for what Jews can and should study or what they should not be studying, the question is, what issues do you taboo? What in your personal life or your professional life have you rendered taboo, so sacred or so dangerous for others to study or to debate, investigate, or challenge, or build upon? What have you in your life rendered taboo? That is a rhetorical question. But it's one It's an opportunity for you to think about what are those subject matters that really make you uncomfortable? Usually about yourself, about something that you've done or haven't done, something that really rubs you the wrong way about your community or about your family or about your circumstances. And you just don't want to talk about it. And you don't want other people to be digging into those issues with you. And so you've made them taboo. You maybe not have said it explicitly, don't talk to me about that. But maybe through your nonverbal communication, you've made certain things in your life too sacred to investigate. That's strategy 1. Let's look at strategy 2. Another strategy is about hiding things. It's sort of like taboo, but it's a little bit different. This one is also coming from Mishnah, this category of the Mishnah, the earliest layer of rabbinic writings. This time it's from Avodah Zarah, the section on idolatry. And let's sort of skim through this one. Rabbi Judah said, Rabbi Ishmael asked Rabbi Yehoshua a series of questions while they were traveling on the road. They had their passports in their pockets. Rabbi Ishmael said to him, for what reason did the sages prohibit the cheeses of Gentiles? I want to go to that cheese shop in downtown Milwaukee. Why can't I go? He's asking. And Rabbi Yehoshua said, because the Gentiles, they curdle their cheese in the stomach of the contents of unslaughtered animal carcasses. And since the carcass of an unslaughtered animal is not kosher by definition, cheese that is curdled with it is likewise prohibited. That sounds reasonable. So Rabbi Ishmael said to him, well, wait a second, but aren't the stomach's contents of a burnt offering subject to more stringent prohibitions than the stomach of an unslaughtered animal carcass? And yet, didn't the rabbi say a priest who is open-minded with regard to what he eats may swallow the stomach of the contents of a burnt offering while they are raw? And these other rabbis did not agree with him. But the sages said, he continues, one may not derive benefit from the stomach contents of a burnt offering from the get-go. And if one did derive benefit from them, he is not liable for misusing consecrated property. We don't need to read the fine print. But move down that paragraph a little bit further. Rabbi Yehoshua said to Rabbi Ishmael, the cheese of Gentiles is prohibited because they still curdle it in the stomach contents of calves used for idol worship. That should be reason enough for us to not eat the cheese of Gentiles. Since it's prohibited to derive benefit from such calves, the cheese curdled in those calves' stomachs is also prohibited. So Rabbi Ishmael asked him a third question. If that is so, why didn't the sages prohibit deriving benefit from the cheese altogether, instead of merely prohibiting its consumption? Instead of answering Rabbi Ishmael's probing question, Rabbi Yehoshua diverted his attention to another matter and said to him, you know, Ishmael, how do you read this verse from the Song of Songs? Do you read it as, for your love, dodecha is better than wine? Or do you read it as, for your love, dodaich is better than wine? And then they go on. Why is it? Why did Rabbi Yehoshua not answer Ishmael's third question? We don't know. But the Gemara, the later generations of rabbis who read this text, they came along and they offer many possible reasons why Rabbi Yehoshua avoids responding to his colleague, Rabbi Ishmael. One theory is that, I can't read my own writing, rabbinic wisdom is sweeter than Torah-etic distinctions, whatever that might mean. Another theory is that the rabbis rebuke to Ishmael not to persist in asking so many questions. You're asking too many questions. Therefore, I'm not going to answer your questions. I'm going to distract you with this question about Song of Songs. The third theory is one should not investigate reasons behind a new ruling, lest others be led to treat that rule with contempt. So the rule not to eat Gentile cheese was a brand new rule on the block, pun intended. And because we don't want the public writ large to question the integrity of that ruling, you should not ask so many questions. Because then the public will also ask questions, and we don't want that. They would lead to contempt. Or maybe it was that Yehoshua didn't answer Ishmael's question because Ishmael was too young to hear the real reason for this ruling. Or perhaps the real reason is so divine it cannot be communicated. So there are all of these theories that later generations of rabbis put forward to give an answer, to justify why Yehoshua does not answer Ishmael's really probing questions. Regardless of what theory they put forward, the fact remains that Yehoshua hid the reasons from Ishmael's curiosity. And so I want to flip it back to ourselves. What knowledge do you hide from others? It's not that you've made them taboo, but what knowledge do you hide from your colleagues and your friends and your family? What reasons do you use to justify your strategy of hiding? You will allow them to ask a couple of questions, but then after a while, you don't want to continue the conversation. Again, it's not because you are uncomfortable, it's because you want to hold a sense of mystery about yourself. You don't want to tell the full story, but you still hide those reasons, that information, that knowledge. And so my question for you is, why? What is your justification for hiding yourself from your friends and your family? Taboo is to make something so sacred, so holy, so don't touch it. The hiding is you can touch it, but I'm not going to tell you everything. And now let's get to the third strategy, doubting. This is a famous story. You've probably encountered it many times before. It comes from the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Bava Metzia, which it's called the Oven of Achnai. The Oven of Achnai is a beautiful story, and we can meditate on it for a year, if not longer. But let's just focus on the first couple of paragraphs here. We learned here at the top of page 3, if somebody cut into an oven into segments and placed sand between the segments, Rabbi Eliezer rules that it's pure, and the sages rule that it's impure. And this is known as the Oven of Achnai. So the sages set. You have an oven, this beautiful plout oven. No, this isn't plout. Yes, it is plout. It is plout. You have a beautiful plout oven sitting in front of you, and it is made up of different kinds of components. The question is, are you allowed to put sand in between the stones? And does that make the oven impure, or does it make it pure? So Rabbi Eliezer says it is pure, whereas the sages rule that it is impure. If it is pure, that means that whenever you do something to it, you are rendering it impure. Does that make sense? I know it's counterintuitive, but if it's already pure and you do mix something up in it, you screw something up, you're rendering it impure. But if it's impure, you can make it more pure, but you can't make it less impure. So Eliezer says one thing, and his colleagues, everybody else says the other. Paragraph A2. What is Achnai? Snake. Come back tomorrow morning for the session on the snake. What is Achnai? It's a snake. Rabbi Yehoshua and Shmuel said, since they surrounded him with words like the snake and they ruled it impure. Interesting. So we've got not only the sages set, but now we have what is going to transpire. This rabbi surrounded him with words like a snake. Paragraph B2, it was taught on the day that Rabbi Eliezer responded with all the responses in the world, but they did not accept them from him. It was a huge argument in the community. Eliezer on one side, the community of the rabbis on the other, and they were disagreeing about the purity of the Plaut oven. And he was giving all of the responses of the world. He said to them, if the law is as I say, let the carob tree prove it. And so the carob tree uprooted itself, and it moved 400 yards away and then sat back down to prove that Eliezer was correct. And they replied, one does not bring proof from the carob tree. And so the carob tree waddled on back to its place. Rabbi Eliezer said, no. If the law is as I say, let the aqueduct prove it. And so the water turned backwards and ran uphill. And they said to them, they replied, one does not bring proof from water. And so the water returned to its place. He said, if the law is as I say, let the walls of this academy, of this beautiful sanctuary, prove it. And the walls of the academy began to fall. Rabbi Yehoshua stood up and he rebuked the walls and said, when the sages defeat each other in the law, what is it to you? And it was taught that they did not fall because of the honor of Rabbi Yehoshua, nor did they stand because of the honor of Rabbi Eliezer. And they are still inclining and standing. Just like our mezuzahs, right? Our mezuzahs are inclining and standing because of a debate between, was it Hillel and Shammai? Yes. It was Hillel and Shammai, right? One said upright, one said below, and so it's still tilting because they're both right. And so finally in paragraph C1, he said to them, if the law is as I say, let it be proved from heaven. And so a bat kol went forth and said, what is it for you that Rabbi Eliezer, since the law is like him in every place that he utters something? The law follows Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Yehoshua stands up again and he says, Lo bashamayim he, it is not in heaven. What is not in heaven? Rabbi Jeremiah clarified, we do not listen to a bat kol, a heavenly voice, since you already gave it to us on Mount Sinai. And therefore, we should incline after the majority. You can stop there, you don't need to turn the page. What do we see going on here? We see Eliezer saying time and time again, the law is with me. My position on the purity of this Plaut oven is what it should be. It is the law. And he brings proof after proof after proof to testify to the veracity of his position, whereas the sages, they kept on saying what? They kept on saying, no. It's not that you're right. It's just that the proof that you have brought is inadequate for this argument. They were undermining the relevance of the evidence. And we see this happening in society, especially over the last several decades and particularly in the last couple of years, where people and institutions in power will question the evidence to cast aspersions on the conclusions. It's not that they are saying you are wrong. I'm just saying that your evidence that you have brought is questionable. We saw that happen in the tobacco industry. That for decades, they knew that tobacco was a carcinogen. And they kept on not disagreeing with the conclusion, but with the evidence, with the science, and cast aspersions and doubt on the evidence and the science. And similarly, we saw that in the last couple of administrations, or the last US administration, where they kept on casting aspersions on the evidence of the scientific enterprise, of the scientific industry, talking especially about the pandemic. They cast aspersions on the evidence. And that throws doubt in the public's mind about who can we trust. Global warming is a wonderful example as well. Evidence is piling up, and people are questioning not the conclusions, but the evidence itself, saying, that's not really relevant. It's not really relevant. We have questions about your methodology. Yes, of course, they're challenging the conclusions, but they're also really digging into the methodology, the relevance of those questions. Skepticism pokes at the integrity of facts as well as people. And what we have seen in this text is that the rabbis engage in that same strategy of questioning the integrity of the evidence that Eliezer is bringing to support his rightful position. Even the Bat Kol, even God says that he has the right position, and yet the community is casting doubts on his testimony. And so my question to you is, where in your life do you cast doubt on other people's testimonies? What proof do you reject when you are talking with a loved one? When she, for example, is telling you, you've done something wrong and hurtful again. What proof do you reject? When do you cast aspersions on the integrity of those people with whom you are speaking? What harms do your strategies actually produce? Not just to yourself, but to that person, or to your company, or to your community, or to your family. And then, how do you justify those strategies? These questions are perhaps really hurtful, and they can really bring up painful discussions. But I think it's also an important one to have, even at this time when it's not Yom Kippur. At this time when we really do need to wrestle with truth and veracity and trust, especially in an age when you don't know who is saying what and what they're hiding. You're going to turn on the news tomorrow and read something. You don't know if a human being wrote that. Could very well be that a computer algorithm wrote that. So who are you going to trust? And how are you going to assess whether you should trust that thing? And how are you going to trust yourself to tell and disclose the full truth? And how can you assure that other people can find you trustworthy when you are speaking? I'm not saying that you shouldn't taboo subjects, or that you shouldn't hide things, or that you shouldn't cast doubt. You should, because it's an evolutionarily adaptive strategy. But we should investigate from time to time what we are doing and why we do those sorts of things. So this is a meditative entree into this weekend's conversations about ethics and Judaism, about what we know and what we think that we know. So I hope that you will come back and join tomorrow morning as we will investigate a character that you think that you know. Tomorrow morning we're going to look at the Nachash, the serpent from the Garden of Eden story. You think you know what it is, but do you? I will invite you to embrace perhaps different perspectives of that wily creature. And then tomorrow at lunchtime, we're going to talk about end-of-life issues and how we can think about what it means to intervene in somebody's last moments. And then on Sunday morning, I will be talking about the beginning of life issues. And the rabbis, thousands of years ago, were already dreaming up of the technologies that we are now using today to bring new life into the world. So please, I look forward to learning with you this whole weekend, and thank you again for welcoming me to this community.
Thank you. So the times again, tomorrow morning we begin our study minyan with the service at 9 o'clock. It will be followed by our text study with Rabbi Crane. It'll segue into lunch at about 11:30, and then the talk following that. And Sunday we begin at 10 o'clock. If you aren't coming for the meals, you can still come for the food for your soul and for your mind. You'll be sticking around at services at the Oneg for some questions. And Gary, Rini. So some of us just returned from Israel yesterday morning, landing at O'Hare at about 6:25 in the morning. God knows what time it really is for us. Rini was one of those. So we welcome some of us back from Israel. And Rini is our Vice President, Social Justice. It's yours.
Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to start just by thanking Rabbi, as well as a number of our congregants who joined us for the trip to Israel. And I thank God for getting us there safely, giving us a wonderful, wonderful 10 days, and bringing us home safely. A number of folks are here tonight, as well as online, watching the service tonight, praying with us together. So it was a fabulous, fabulous experience, and I would certainly encourage anyone who has the opportunity to do such a trip to do it. It was really wonderful. A week ago, we were together in Jerusalem for Shabbat, and it was really awesome. So thank you, Dan, wherever you went. There you are, for accompanying us tonight. Thank you, Paul and Tamara, for being our greeters, and you can thank them by bringing your books back to them. Happy birthday, Nadine, and thank you to your family for the Bima baskets, and to Dan for hosting the Oneg Shabbat tonight. You've already heard about all the wonderful things that are happening this weekend, so please save your bulletin so that you know when to come and what you're going to learn about. The community Passover food drive is happening right now. Please bring your matzah ball soup mix, and your grape juice to the synagogue. We will be collecting it on Wednesday to get to the food pantry so that we can put together the 400 bags that are going out to those who need food for Passover so that they can have a Seder. If you don't want to bother with going shopping, you can always write a check. We will accept that, and it does talk about in here where that would go. There is continued lifelong learning, as you see in your bulletin. We have a special guest again coming on April 2nd, Rabbi Arik Asherman, whom we heard in Israel last week. And there is more information from Rabbi Berkson coming on that. Brotherhood is inviting you to join them for the Brewers on April 30, thank you. Can't read either. And please join us this weekend for Rabbi Crane's other learnings, and Shabbat Shalom.
And I just want to add my thanks to our Scholar in Residence task force, led by Susan Cosner, Director of Lifelong Learning, Lois Brasner, Sherry Blumberg, Sherry Melman, and Audrey Berman. We thank you also. Our closing song is, which you'll find on page 625. As we rise and remain standing for the benediction, and then we'll see you at the Oneg, and I understand there might be some birthday cake there also.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'ed nasa b'chezoko azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharek yiklot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hover ve'hu yeh b'tifara Adon asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'ed nasa b'chezoko azay melech shemo nikra ve'hu echad v'yed sheni להכשיר לו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית בלא העוז והמשרה אדון עולם אשר מלך טרם כל יציר נברא עת נעשה בחרצונו אזי מלך שמו נקרא והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי ויצרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי ונכוסי ביום אקרא אדון עולם אשר מלך ותשם ויעירה ואמרוכי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא אדוני עולם אשר מלך בטרם בכל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו בו אזי מלך שמו נקרא.
Adonai Oz Liamo Yitain. May the Eternal One grant us all strength. Adonai Yivarech et Amo Shalom. May the Eternal One bless us all always with the most precious gift of all, the gift of shalom, of peace, of wholeness. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.
We'll see you at the Oneg.
I'm located in Kansas City, Missouri, and I was in Wisconsin with the congregation for a period of over 2 years. Bye-bye.